a hot flash, I've heard many doctors say, and many clients report that their doctors will say, oh, don't worry about it. I know it's uncomfortable. Have the room cooler, take a cooler shower. It'll pass, ride it out. Well, a hot flash is an indicator that you're losing hippocampal volume. It's affecting your brain. You're having reduced blood flow and oxygen to your brain. It's affecting your cardiovascular system. It's a really strong warning. It's not something that you want to wait out.
Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, where high performance health meets non-toxic living. I'm Brittany Ford, a holistic nutritionist, bringing you science-backed strategies in biohacking, longevity, and holistic wellness. Whether you're navigating fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, or simply striving for optimal well-being, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the show. I am so thrilled that you are listening to the podcast. Thank you for being here. This episode today was a fantastic interview with Elizabeth Katzman, and we dove into perimenopause. I learned a lot from this episode. I'm not going to lie. I did not know half the things that she was telling me, and I was shocked. We talked about bone health. I have never talked about bone health before. Some of the statistics that she knew, I was just shocked at. We talked about cognitive health, brain fog, all of these things that impact perimenopause. We talked about silent symptoms that happen during perimenopause that you might not know about. We talked about the gut and liver and detoxing. We talked about root cause wellness. And honestly, there was just so much that we dived into that I learned a lot. And I know you are going to learn a lot from this episode. What I loved about this one the most is that it really made me understand that perimenopause is something that I want to really, really optimize, but I also want to keep on my radar right now. At my age, at 31, it's not something that I think is soon, but I could go into perimenopause at 35, like we talked about on this show. And so I want to keep that in my back of my head of okay, this could be something that's sooner than I think. And how I treat perimenopause is how my menopause part of my life is going to go. And now you might think, whoa, that's so far from where you're at right now. Don't worry about it. But as a biohacker and someone who's so into health optimization, you can't think like that. You really do need to be thinking ahead and thinking, what can I do now so that I can be healthier tomorrow? And that's what I loved about this episode. So no matter what age you are, I think this could be a little bit of a wake-up call to all the women listening that, hey, this is something that needs to be on your radar. And you can do something about it right now. And the better you treat your body and yourself and take care of yourself right now, the easier your life is going to be as you get older. And that's what I took away from this. And I loved it. And I also learned so much about bone health. I'll say it again, that I just didn't know. And I honestly wish I knew back in my teenage years, because we talk about those teenage years and how pivotal they are for really building healthy, strong bones. So enjoy this podcast episode. You're going to get so many golden nuggets out of it. You're really going to like it. I think you're going to learn a lot. And before we dive in, a shout out to Bioptimizers. They have the best supplements, honestly. I love their magnesium, digestive enzymes, probiotics, and their mushroom breakthrough powder. All of them are incredible. I take their magnesium every single night. It has all 7 types of magnesium in it. Speaking of bone health, honestly, magnesium is so pivotal for bones. It's so pivotal. It's a mineral that is involved in over 300 processes in the body. And so it's something that we should all be making sure we're getting adequate amounts of. Also helps with stress, sleep, if you're irritated all the time, if you're quick to anger, if you are tired and fatigued, all could be signs of magnesium deficiency. And our food does not have enough, not even close. So you need to be supplementing, and I use Bioptimizers. You can use my discount code for 10% off, and that is Biohacking Brittany. And shout out to Novus. Man, you guys love Novus. And so do I. So Novus created this drink powder that's orange flavored. It tastes so good. And essentially, it targets all 12 hallmarks of aging. So in the body, we are learning that there are 12 pathways or 12 causes of aging on a cellular level. And if we can have the right nutrients, we can actually support those pathways to not be as activated or overstimulated. And Novus, lo and behold, created one drink powder that targets all of them. Wild. The best thing about Novus, actually not even the best thing, is that it not only helps your longevity, it actually helps your energy in the moment. So you feel energized when you drink it, and then you support your longevity long term. Are you kidding me? Sign me up. I literally tell them when I talk to the team, I'm like, guys, I'm going to be on your subscription probably for the rest of my life because it's just so good. So check out Novus. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany and save. I strongly suggest you do that. I'll put my link in the show notes for you and on my website so you can find everything super easily. And enjoy this podcast episode. If you have any questions about your health or your journey, you can always send me a message on Instagram and I would be happy to respond at biohackingbrittany. And I will catch you soon for another episode. Well, welcome back to Biohacking with Brittany. Thank you for tuning in to another episode today. We are going to be diving into the often overlooked world of perimenopause. We're going to be talking about brain fog, anxiety, bone health, bone loss, and all of the other silent symptoms that can kind of start to creep up in this stage. I am joined by Elizabeth Katzman, who is a certified perimenopause coach. She is a FDN practitioner and founder of Strong Choices. So, Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brittany. Thanks. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. I was kind of reading through some of your work and I read about women being twice as likely as men to develop dementia. And I thought that was really interesting. I've kind of seen this in my own family and my husband's family as well. I'm curious, like, how does perimenopause kind of tie into that if there is a link at all?
It's interesting. There's so many different roads to Alzheimer's. I'm a practitioner with Dr. Goodenow. He's incredible. He has done amazing research in this area. A lot of it is genetics, lifestyle, toxic exposures. It's also Alzheimer's is also called type 3 diabetes. So you can definitely get there through blood sugar imbalances, and that changes drastically when a woman goes through perimenopause and menopause. Their ability to maintain optimal glucose levels declines dramatically. So if you could eat a banana on an empty stomach before, maybe you can't now. So I suggest women in perimenopause wear a continuous glucose monitor for at least a couple weeks and just do it maybe every 6 months and sort of check in, because things change so quickly in perimenopause that it can slip by. So you could wear a continuous glucose monitor, you're maintaining optimal levels, and then 6 months later, all of a sudden you're not. You check your hormones, and what do you know? Your estrogen and progesterone are way lower than they used to be. Lisa Mosconi is doing a lot of amazing research in this area. She has a new book that came out, and she shows that women's hippocampal volume decreases substantially during late perimenopause and early menopause. So the changes happen fast, and if you're not prepared earlier, it's gonna get away from you. And even if you decide to do HRT, like HRT is better at prevention than fixing things later.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as all things concerned, when we're talking about cardiovascular disease risk, bone density, and Alzheimer's. And of course, we want to make sure that things like mycotoxin exposure, parasites, and those types of things, they all contribute to dementia, as well as things like gingivitis and our dental health declines in perimenopause. We have more bleeding in our gums. We have poor circulation. So there's vascular dementia also, which is more correlated with men. But, our cardiovascular risk is much better than a man's throughout our life until we hit like late perimenopause, menopause. And then we we substantially increase our risk of cardiovascular disease.
Wow. So it feels like there's a lot that happens in that perimenopause space. I guess like the question that comes to mind is why? Like what is actually happening on a very cellular level that is causing suddenly you to be struggling with metabolism or at higher risk for these things compared to when you're younger?
So we have estrogen receptors in every cell in our body. So it literally affects everything as our estrogen and progesterone declines. Our liver, for example, has a lot of estrogen receptors. So as estrogen declines, our cholesterol increases. It's one of the quickest indicators that a woman will say, like, I haven't changed diet, exercise, nothing. My cholesterol is skyrocketing. And that's why it's because of the decrease in estrogen. And the same goes for insulin. So your body is going to need to pump out more insulin for the receptors to actually pick up on it because you have less of them. So your insulin's going up, your cholesterol's going up, and you've changed nothing. And the same thing as far as your muscle goes. We have estrogen receptors in our muscle cells. So you could be lifting even heavier than you were before. You could be eating the protein. But if you don't have the estrogen, you're not going to be growing your muscle, and your body composition then changes. You have more abdominal weight among your midsection. And so that also becomes its own organ, and it's producing estrogen, but it's producing estrone. So there's many types of estrogens, but there's three primary types, and estrone's the worst one, and that's produced in the fat cells. And it does seem like your body wants you to have more estrogen, so it's going to hang on to more fat in order to make estrone. It's its own little biohack, but not one that we want.
Right, right. So, wow, that's a lot that is happening. And, perimenopause, my understanding is like it's what the 5-10 years before menopause hits. Is that the correct timeline for that?
Yes. So you could be, the average age of menopause is 51, meaning it's really an arbitrary term, menopause. It just means 12 months without having a natural menstrual cycle. But does that mean that 6 months in, that's not menopause? It's very arbitrary. Yeah. But the average age is 51. So let's say menopause happens for you at 45, though. Then 35, you could start experiencing the decline. And so all of the symptoms of, like anxiety, problem sleeping, those are largely related to progesterone. Progesterone declines first in most cases. Everyone's different, but it's what I see most often. Progesterone will decline first. So women will have anxiety before where they didn't used to, because progesterone works on your GABA receptors and produces allopregnanolone, which is very calming and relaxing. And so all of a sudden you don't have that. It also affects our nervous system. So we have less ability to stimulate our vagus nerve. So that's when, you want to hum, and cold plunges around your neck can really help stimulate the vagus nerves, or devices. There's lots of vagal nerve stimulation devices. Meditation, all of that becomes more important at a time in a woman's life where she doesn't really have the desire to want to slow down and think about that stuff, right? It's really quite challenging in a lot of different ways, especially I see a lot with women in their late 30s in particular, late 30s, early 40s, who don't want to wrap their mind around the fact that menopause is closer than they think, because it makes us conjure up images of just old ladies. No way, that's not me. I'm still like having a good time. My kids are still young. There's just no way that the M word is like part of my vernacular. So I do try to raise awareness at younger ages, so that if someone is feeling like they're having a hard time falling asleep, they're having anxiety, and they are having less resilience than they used to, a noticeable amount of mental challenges, it's not their fault. Yeah. And in a lot of cases, they could just take a little progesterone, or things like Vitex or maca to help.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so interesting. And I think it's just helpful actually to know that it's something coming in your life, whether you're a few years out from it or a decade out from it or whatever. Like just even the awareness of perimenopause seems to be something that we need to be talking more and more about. Because I don't think, I mean, I bet you if I asked my mom, I bet you she doesn't even know what perimenopause is, or she just knew, oh, my period stopped for a year. This must be menopause. And I know she had symptoms like she went through hot flashes and like all these things a few years ago. And that's kind of the only dialogue that I really have ever heard, unless you look into the health space about it, where people are like you are teaching people to be more proactive about it. Lately, we've all been reminded how important it is to stay sharp no matter how old we are. We really can't let the years slow down our mental game. Whether we're 30, 40, 80, we can choose to feel our best. If you've noticed that your brain feels a bit foggy as you age, or even as you're a new mom and you're experiencing mom brain, as they call it, it is time to clear the mental cobwebs. And I can't think of a better and more delicious way to do it than by having my daily dose of Mushroom Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. Mushroom Breakthrough packs a powerful punch with 4 cognitive boosting mushrooms: lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi, plus collagen for extra brain support. Lion's mane in particular can increase the levels of BDNF, which is a protein that helps brain cells grow. This is crucial for learning and memory, which typically decline as we age. It's kind of like fertilizer for your brain cells. On top of these incredible benefits, it's also delicious and comes in 3 different flavors that all taste amazing. Give Mushroom Breakthrough a try and feel the difference. I have a glass every single day, and you can do the same. Head to bioptimizers.com/Brittany, and you can use my discount code biohackingbrittany, which is in all capitals, to get your Mushroom Breakthrough for 10% off today. Your future self will thank you.
Yeah. And I do remember, my mom going through that and thinking, wow, she seems a lot different. It was noticeable in personality and body composition. She was always incredibly thin, could eat whatever she wanted. All of a sudden she had some extra weight. And I remember thinking at a young age, like in my, late teens, early 20s, thinking, wow, I'm going to have to really watch it when I hit my 40s and 50s, because something definitely changed and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. How does, I've seen like people talk about early menopause, and that being a phenomenon that might be increasing in society. I know when I was going through some issues that I was having with my ovaries and my cycles a few years ago, that was kind of part of our discussion. And I have a family member who went through very early menopause, like early 30s. Well, let's say early to mid 30s, that type of thing, who basically stopped ovulating much earlier than she, I guess, thought she would. So what is happening there for the women who are experiencing this early menopause phenomenon that we're seeing?
There are so many different reasons. And for some women, it can come back. It's not actually their ovaries shutting down. It can just be amenorrhea for a variety of reasons that I can get into. So for a lot of women, it will come back.
Okay.
So there's sort of 2 different categories. There's women who can lose their period because of surgery, and they may never get it back. It can also be because of xenoestrogens, which are, from plastics and toxins, and they're much stronger than our own estrogens. So they bind more strongly to the receptor. So our own endogenous estrogen that we're making isn't going to get on the receptor because the xenoestrogens have already taken up their spot. And then, their progesterone will decline. They'll stop having cycles. If you're young enough, there are cases where you can get it back. I've worked with women in their 20s that there was one woman I worked with who actually has genetics. It's really sad in her whole family, and there's not a coming back from that. But mostly what I see are environmental factors affecting girls right now. And that if they do the proper, all of the basics that we talk about, they can get their cycle back. But I do also see it happen in surgery quite a bit. But usually it's more linked to toxins, like endometriosis, for example. Those girls, first of all, I'm kind of sick of talking about MTHFR because I feel like, okay, everyone's got it, whatever, at least half. So it's an issue for a lot of people. but those people in particular, they're going to be less able to excrete toxins. And so they're more inclined to have endometriosis, which can affect your menstrual cycles. But I am definitely saying, because of the toxins in the environment, that women are experiencing perimenopause at younger ages, and stress as well. Stress plays a huge role.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's honestly really encouraging that if you were to just do some, I don't want to say just, because it can be hard. Like if you're willing to do lifestyle changes and kind of slowly start, removing these exogenous estrogen sources, whether it's food or plastics or all these different ways that we're kind of getting it, I feel like, that's something that is actually doable for somebody, and it feels less like this massive thing that they have to go through, and it feels less heavy, than, oh my gosh, like I might be in perimenopause early. What if I wanted to have kids? Oh, like, what am I doing? Like, I just feel like it can be super overwhelming for women.
Well, and there is, early, mid, late. So there's different things that you can do depending on where you're at. So at some point, your ovaries are going to start producing hormones. We still do produce some in our adrenals, but when we're in late menopause and our ovaries are winding down, that's really when you want to think about HRT. But when we're looking at early perimenopause, we can do a lot more to get more of a life cycle out of the ovaries we have. We want to focus on mitochondrial function and, all of the things like red light and PEMF and supplements like MitoPure is really great for the ovaries in particular, and spermidine.
Nice.
And again, like the Vitex, ashwagandha, and maca, and all of those things are amazing early, mid perimenopause. But late perimenopause, you still want to be focused on the basics. You still want to be focused on your mitochondrial health, because estrogen does play such a key role in our mitochondrial production. But the herbs, they're not gonna cut it in late perimenopause.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've actually recently been thinking about the ovaries and the longevity of the ovaries, and why do they age faster than other organs in the body. And this idea of how do we kind of extend their health span. It's a very biohacky way of thinking about it, but it's something I recently heard on another podcast. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. Like, how can we support the ovaries to continue to produce hormones for longer so that we're healthier for longer? And yeah, I think what you said is very interesting about the mitochondria. I'd love for you to dive more into that if you have specific things that maybe women can start doing today to support those mitochondria in their ovaries.
We have, as women, the most mitochondria in our ovaries. So ovaries, heart, brain. So when I do red light, I always make sure I have a 3-panel. So I always make sure I have my top off, my bra off, and I make sure that I get it down to my ovaries and then over my head. So anything that's supporting your mitochondrial function is going to be supporting your ovaries. And just really living as clean a life as we possibly can, because our ovaries are so quickly influenced by toxins and by stress, by over exercising, by making sure, that we have enough nutrients, enough fat, enough protein. We see it in anorexics and bulimics, people with eating disorders. It's one of the first things that they stop having a period, and that's their ovaries shutting down. They're not nourishing themselves enough. So we really need to be kind and gentle. I think that a lot of times when people think of biohacking and cold plunges and saunas, it seems harsh. It's really not. There's a very gentle way that we can incorporate all of those things. And, it's not the type of thing that a woman needs to do every day. And you don't need to do a sauna for an hour, and you don't need to do a cold plunge for 10 minutes. It's, you can pop in for a minute and a half to 3 minutes in the plunge, and you can do 20 minutes in the sauna. You can get all these great benefits without, killing yourself. And you don't need to meditate for 45 minutes. Lay down flat for a minute and take some deep breaths. And it really is going to make all the difference in the world, because cortisol plays a huge role. Obviously, cortisol is our friend. It's what gets us up and going. And It can also be a runaway train, especially in perimenopause. It can get very out of balance. And you'll see it too on the road and in parking lots. There are women of a certain age that get extra spicy. And it's no coincidence. Their cortisol is jacked up and their progesterone is super low. And it does not need to be that way. The other big thing I love for younger women to think about, especially women in their teens and 20s, and I know it's the last thing on their mind, but it's bone health.
Yeah.
Because we're building most of our bone before the age of 18, definitely before the age of 30. Yeah, those are the prime years. And those are when a lot of girls are taking birth control, antidepressants, grabbing a muffin and a coffee, doing a lot of cardio, not thinking about building muscle. So at that time in their life, when they're supposed to really be laying the foundation for their bones, they're not doing it. It's a critical time. The other critical time is perimenopause. During late perimenopause, early menopause, we can lose up to 10% of our bone density in those just 5 to 7 years. It happens really quickly. And so, and DEXA scans aren't covered under insurance until a woman is 65 years old. They're not very expensive. So if you can't get it covered, skip the Starbucks and use that money for a DEXA instead.
Yeah.
Just get a baseline, earlier rather than later, like 35. And if everything's fine, check again at 40. And then I like to do it like every 2 years in your 40s. And even more than a DEXA, I love echo light scans, but they're harder to find because they're looking at the quality of your bone. So a DEXA is going to tell you your bone density, but an echo light is going to actually give you your fracture risk and the quality. So a DEXA could say that things are maybe not in the greatest place, but an echo light will tell you, well, actually the quality of your bone is nice and your risk of fracture is low. But after the age of 50, 1 out of 2 women will have a fragility fracture. So not necessarily a hip, it could be a wrist or an ankle, but it's an indicator that your bones aren't in a great place. And the statistics are really grim because 1 out of 3 women to have a hip fracture will pass away within the first year. Another third never regains independence. It's one of the leading causes of being in a nursing home. So, I don't need to live forever, but I want to make sure that those last years that I can like go to the bathroom by myself.
Yeah.
And it's something that 20-year-olds are not necessarily thinking about. So I do like to try to reach that younger audience because a lot of the women who I work with who are in perimenopause, they've got teenage girls. And even though it's not on their radar, I found that once you talk to them about it, they get it. I think that age group is super motivated. My 2 older boys are 18 and 16, and I see it in their friends all the time that they may not know these things, but when you talk to them about it, they're so into it and they're like, okay,
cool.
I'll start my day in a different way. I may not need to take a birth control pill. 60% of girls on birth control get it for symptoms and not for birth control.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the way that you described it is exactly what I did, to be honest. Like I was on birth control for 7 years. I was doing cardio at my university gym, drinking coffee, doing the whole thing. And was healthy, but had no idea about bone density, wasn't even thinking about that. And simply just didn't even know that most of it is developed by the time I was 18. I mean, thankfully there's some that was developed by the time I was 30. That makes me feel better. Cause I've been strength training for quite a while, but, that's remarkable. And I find even just in general, like educating the younger, like Gen Z on how do we think about our health long-term and longevity or the longevity of our bones is something that I really don't see a lot of people talking about. But it's great that you have had success with the people that you have talked about with it so far.
Yeah. And it's there's an optimistic perspective, which is, our bones are constantly remodeling, which is the coolest thing. So every 10 years, we've got a new skeleton. So the one that you have at 30 isn't the one that you're going to have at 40 or 50. It just becomes more challenging. That's all. Right. Because and as we lose estrogen, our bone turnover changes, our ratios change. So we're breaking down more and we're not building up as much.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes more difficult. It's one of the reasons why, when we're going through perimenopause, we become anabolic resistant. So it becomes more difficult to put on muscle. You need to eat more protein. You need to lift more weights. And the same thing goes with your bones. So it's not that none of it's possible. It all just becomes more challenging.
Yeah.
So you want to really, teens, 20s, 30s, be training for perimenopause, because the more bone density you have, the more muscle mass you have, the better that those years are going to go for you, the easier it's going to go, not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
But it's really all of the silent things. It's the bones, it's your cardiovascular health. And as you mentioned at the beginning, your risk of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
A hot flash, I've heard many doctors say, and many clients report that their doctors will say, oh, it's, don't worry about it. I know it's uncomfortable. Have the room cooler, take a cooler shower. It'll pass, ride it out. Well, a hot flash is an indicator that you're losing hippocampal volume. It's affecting your brain. You're having reduced blood flow and oxygen to your brain. It's affecting your cardiovascular system. It's a really strong warning. It's not something that you want to wait out.
Yeah.
Another issue is that a hot flash is really easy to address with a low dose estrogen. And so HRT becomes really complicated because a lot of women will go to practitioners and say, oh yeah, my practitioner is totally up on HRT and they know it doesn't cause cancer and they're functional and all these things. And they gave me the patch. And even the highest dose patch is not going to give you enough estrogen to protect your bones. So there hasn't been enough research to know what level of estradiol we need to protect ourselves from cardiovascular disease and prevent our brains from shrinking. But we do know that we need between 60 to reach levels of estradiol between 60 and 80 for bone protection, to not see bone loss. I'm not even talking about, bone growth, but I'm saying just to stop the bone loss. So we sort of assume by proxy that, for cardiovascular and bone health, that we do want to see at least between 60 and 80 of estradiol. Even the highest dose patch doesn't lead most women to those levels. And everyone absorbs estradiol differently. And there's also a big push right now in the world of perimenopause where, oh, it's the zone of chaos and you don't need to test because you never know day to day. I think it's because a lot of those women have telehealth platforms, and it's not a great business model to have to micromanage your client and have them retest every 3 months and have a real relationship with them and explain to them, how we need to tweak, because there is a lot of tweaking involved in HRT. You have to check every 3 months and either raise or lower. It's not easy. There's some work need to be done. So it gets difficult when you're trying to do that with a telehealth platform. But even a low dose patch will make your hot flashes go away and it'll get you a good night's sleep. So a woman thinks she's fine, but she's still losing bone density. So you'll see her 10 years later and she's like, wait, what just happened? Like, I was on top of this. I'm on HRT. I knew everything to do. How do you tell me now I have osteopenia?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways to do HRT. The pill is, and sadly, and I can't understand it, is really popular. And I know doctors that do it for themselves who don't understand it. They're on the pill. They're in, late perimenopause. But the pill will take away a hot flash and it'll help you get a good night's sleep. And they think that that's HRT.
Imagine waking up each day feeling energized, mentally sharp, and visibly youthful, no matter your age. I've unlocked exactly that with Novus Core, and it's completely upgraded my approach to longevity. Novus Core is the only longevity supplement that targets all 12 key causes of aging, something no other product does. Most supplements only address one or two aspects of aging, but Novus Core is a complete formula designed to work across all the biological pathways of aging in one simple daily drink. Developed by leading longevity experts from Harvard Medical School and MIT, Novus Core is backed by serious scientific research. What makes Novus Core so effective? It's packed with 12 scientifically validated ingredients like fisetin, glycine, calcium alpha, ketoglutarate, and magnesium, each included at scientifically proven doses. These ingredients work together to protect your DNA, help reduce inflammation and cellular senescence, and support stem cell health, effectively slowing aging at its root causes. And here's something even more exciting. You don't have to wait years to feel the difference. 81% of Novus customers report noticeable improvements in their skin, mood, energy, or sleep within just 2 weeks, with even greater benefits accumulating over time. Since incorporating Novus Core, I've experienced incredible boosts in my energy, honestly, like right away when I'm drinking it, improved sleep, sharper cognition, and balanced moods, and even visibly healthier skin, which we all love. I genuinely feel younger, healthier, and more vibrant every single day when I have this. If you are ready to take your longevity journey to the next level, you can visit novuslabs.com and use my discount code biohackingbrittany for 10% off of your first month subscription of Novus Core. That's novoslabs.com with code biohackingbrittany for 10% off your first month's subscription. Enjoy and let me know what you think. Oh, interesting. Wow. Actually, that's the first time I've heard of this. Like using it for those set of symptoms in that time of life.
Yeah. And that woman will never know, like, if she's been on the pill for, all of her 40s, she has no idea if she's in early, late, mid, or maybe she's already in menopause because she's not having a menstrual cycle. She's having a withdrawal bleed. She has no idea at what stage she's in.
Wow. It seems like a quick fix.
Yeah.
Versus like a deeper, holistic solution that takes more time.
Right. I mean, we're talking about making a woman whole and preventing the big killers as opposed to symptom management.
Yeah.
So, it's traditional versus functional, but women get confused when they go to a practitioner who is open to HRT. They assume by virtue of that alone that they're more functional than they are. So if they're given a birth control pill or a low dose patch and their symptoms go away, in their minds, they're thinking that is a functional approach. Just because we know that most traditional doctors are not down with HRT.
Yeah.
And that's because, in 2002, I don't know if you talked about the Women's Health Initiative on your show before.
No, not what you're mentioning.
It's the big reason why people are scared away from taking hormones. So in 2002, there was a huge study called the Women's Health Initiative, and they stopped it early. The press was like this, it went viral before viral was even a thing. And everyone said, if you're on hormones, stop them. They cause cancer, scared the crap out of everyone. So women who are now in their 70s and 80s, most of them didn't take HRT because of that, because they were around, in their 40s, 50s at the time. That whole generation of women have suffered tremendously with Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease and osteoporosis because of that. And so unless your practitioner, doctor did functional training after medical school, they would never know that whole study had been debunked. It was poorly given HRT. It was synthetic hormones. It was oral estrogen, which we know when you do HRT, you never do oral estrogen. It's always topical or injections because oral does increase your risk of blood clots and cardiovascular events.
Wow.
Progestins, that's the synthetic form of progesterone, they do cause increased risks of every issue that you want to avoid. They actually, make you feel worse. They make anxiety worse. And the women that they had in the study, many of them were over the age of 65. You really want to start HRT late perimenopause or within the first 10 years. So it was a poorly performed and sought out test. And it was just completely manipulated in the press.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of behind us. And now people are more open to it. But even now, most people that I work with are really afraid of taking hormones. And estrogen won't cause a cancer. It can cause a pre-existing cancer to grow. Because estrogen's an anabolic hormone. So it causes things to grow, things like your bones and your brain, and it's really great, and growth is great. But if you have an existing cancer, you wouldn't want to grow it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had this same discussion similar with my mom when I was suggesting she start using a progesterone cream, bioidentical progesterone cream. And she talked to her doctor, and her doctor said this very same thing of like, oh, it might cause cancer, blah, 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 all of these things. But that doctor went and did the research and decided like it was actually safe for her to use it. So
Right.
she has been using it. But I find it interesting that, like, I'm glad that study was in 2002, and it was like, it's getting further and further away from us, and more people are talking about it and being open to it. I'm also curious how this plays into the kind of trend that I'm seeing of women having kids later and later in life. And so, like, I remember I was a nanny like a while ago for a woman who had her baby at 41. And so if women are having babies into their 40s, does that push off perimenopause and menopause? Like, is the whole thing kind of then moved, or like, how does that all kind of work together?
I've seen it go both ways.
Hmm.
I had my fourth baby at 41.
Okay.
For me, I think it pushed it off. But I've seen women then, after they have their baby, just completely plummet. So I think a lot of it depends on your lifestyle. I mean, for almost 18 years now, have been doing all of the things, right?
Yeah.
I've been, the red light, and really making sure I support the basics, protein, mitochondria, all the things. But for a woman who isn't doing those things and is trying to grow a baby in her 40s, can really suck the life out of you,
Yeah.
and they'll plummet. So I do think it's very lifestyle dependent. And a lot of it depends also on genetics. So I know, obviously, it's lifestyle that pulls the trigger. And in most cases, that's true. And it's not that it doesn't apply here, but almost all the time, a girl will hit menopause the same age as her mom. Like, it's crazy.
Wow.
It's really crazy how down to the year, it's almost always the same. So if your mom had an early perimenopause or an early menopause at like 43,
Yeah.
chances are 42, 43, 44, that's going to be you too, even if you're doing all of the things. So it's not 100% of the time, but yeah, I would say that having a baby in later years can work for or against you, depending on your genetics and your lifestyle.
Yeah. Have you seen anything with your clients in terms of women who've had kids who haven't had kids at all? Like, is there, because I'm just thinking of like how much your bones even change during pregnancy, and your hormones obviously change, and then they can plummet and they can kind of go up and down and all these things. But if you don't have kids at all, would that make perimenopause easier?
I've seen that go both ways. So when you're pregnant, you're not ovulating, you're not releasing eggs. So it does sort of, you have, in theory, a larger reserve.
Yeah.
Right. And so you will see that the more kids that someone has, the later a menopause you can have, because you're maintaining your ovarian reserve.
Right.
And I have certainly worked with, a good handful of clients that I can think of that did not have children and were fully menopausal at 40.
Wow.
But I also, I have a client who has 3 kids and was fully menopausal at 41. So there's an exception to every rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in general, right, the more that you're not cycling, it's one of the reasons why women, with PCOS they can have a later onset of menopause, because they ovulate less.
Yeah.
Menstrual cycles.
Yeah. Interesting. I just had my first baby last year, and I had a tincture, 2 tinctures made out of my placenta. And I also took my placenta capsules during early postpartum. And my theory and my thinking around the tinctures is that I want to keep it for perimenopause or menopause. And it's in like a dark glass bottle. We did the shaking every day for 6 weeks. And I followed this like protocol, and basically just this idea that in my mind, it's kind of like my own bioidentical, not even bioidentical. It's like my own hormones in a different format. And it can last up to 10, 20 years in a dark, cool room type of idea. Have you heard anything about doing something like this, or what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I did placenta encapsulation too with my kids. And I felt great after all the pregnancies, except for my first. That was my least holistic pregnancy, and everything changed after that. But there are a lot of things in the works for peptides that are targeted towards your ovaries to extend the life of them. And there are, I just was at the A4M conference in Vegas, and
Nice.
there's a company there that presented that's working on technology to sort of forever maintain ovarian function, which is,
Wow.
I think in the next 10 years, I think that's a possibility that your ovaries could be producing your own endogenous hormones throughout. So I mean, you're a great age because it's an interesting time to see what we can do to preserve our ovaries. It's a whole nother level that a few companies are working on. And I do think it's promising.
Yeah. Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Have you also heard of PRP for your ovaries as well?
Yes.
Yes. What are your thoughts around that? Like, have you seen any success?
I don't know women who have done it. I think that in theory, why not? It works for rejuvenation, for everything else. But I also think that by the time the other technologies are out, we probably won't need that.
Yeah.
I also, since you just had a baby, I know a lot of girls your age, and I know friends of yours probably are having issues with maintaining their pregnancy early on because of lack of progesterone.
Yeah.
There's such low progesterone levels in your age group right now. A lot of it is stress. I feel like a lot of it is technology. Just spending so much time on phones and social just really depletes progesterone. And, just the levels of anxiety right now are through the roof, for men and women. But, that's something that's really sad that's going on, that I see, even girls in their 20s, early 30s can benefit from supplementing with progesterone, which traditionally would be something you really wouldn't think about until someone was in their 40s. And I also see people doing progesterone wrong a lot. So our period, our menstrual cycle, that's a sign of vitality, a sign of longevity. There's a lot of reasons why we want to keep it going. So I am 50 years old. I take HRT. I'm late perimenopausal. I'm not yet menopausal. So I will ovulate sort of irregularly. Some months, yes. Some months, no. But even when I'm not ovulating, I'm still going to have a cycle. It won't technically be a menstrual cycle. It'll be a withdrawal bleed. But there's a reason why you only want progesterone the last 2 weeks of the month. So we want to support our P53 tumor suppressor genes. And in order to do that, our natural cycle is to have not a lot of progesterone the first 2 weeks. Not a lot, meaning like almost none, because the first 2 weeks of the month is produced in our adrenals, and it's not much at all. Then after we ovulate, that's when the corpus luteum opens up. Then we have our nice rise in progesterone. And the cyclical nature of that is why, we have the balance between osteoclast and osteoblast activity. So we're breaking down old bone in order to lay new healthy bone on top of that. And we're also activating those tumor suppressor genes. So if you're giving a woman progesterone all month long, which is what I see more often than not in hormone replacement, they're not getting any of those benefits.
Yeah.
The reason that they're doing that, again, this is the idea of like a woman thinking she's going to someone functional, and they're really not. It's because most doctors, from what I've seen, don't want their menopausal clients cycling because it's just something more to manage. I mean, our whole life, we have a risk of fibroids and endometriosis, right? We have those risks anyway. Like, we're women, we have ups and downs of our hormones.
Yep.
But a doctor at that point, then they're just sick of it. And they're like, okay, you're in menopause. Enjoy it. You don't need a cycle, right? A cycle's a pain in the butt. It puts you at risk for certain things. Let's just avoid that. We're going to give you estrogen, progesterone all month long. You're going to sleep well. You're going to feel great. And it is going to take care of all of the symptoms, but you're not going to be getting the benefits.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuance when it comes to HRT.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not getting any of the long-term benefits really in that space.
No.
And I do want to just circle back to what you said about the miscarriage thing. Unfortunately, I have many friends who've gone through miscarriages. And I think this statistic, the last that I heard, I think it is 1 in 4 women would have experienced a miscarriage sometime in their life. Is HRT or progesterone something that you can take during pregnancy to potentially reduce that risk?
Yes. And I love it. I love it early on.
Okay.
Obviously, that's not a time that we're cycling. We have super high levels of every hormone. So you're not at risk of having too much progesterone at that point. There are a few physicians that I like to refer women to early in pregnancy to start progesterone right away.
Right away. Yeah.
Right away. And there are studies showing that those children have higher IQs and less autoimmune issues. Like
Wow.
there's a lot of benefits to taking progesterone during pregnancy, besides just trying to avoid a miscarriage.
And would it be the entire pregnancy or would it just be the first trimester?
Typically the first trimester.
Yeah.
Because then, your own progesterone should really be kicked into high gear.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Would there be a similar recommendation for postpartum, potentially when women are going through maybe postpartum depression or anxiety?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I am shocked how little it is recommended. Because it helps with anxiety so much.
Yeah.
It can make you overly tired. So if you're taking care of a newborn, I would go for topical or suppository. Oh, that's another thing. During pregnancy, I really like the suppository form.
Oh, interesting.
The most. So do a vaginal suppository because it gets right to the uterus. Same goes for anyone with like any sort of uterine issue. I like to put it right to the source. But oral progesterone is going to affect GABA and allopregnanolone a lot faster and more intensely than a topical progesterone would. So if you're taking care of a little one, I would recommend a topical progesterone.
Okay.
When we're talking about HRT, if you're giving estrogen, it's typically recommended that you would take an oral progesterone or a vaginal to make sure that it's getting to the uterine lining. For someone who has had a hysterectomy and doesn't have a uterus and they're taking estrogen, you still need progesterone. So a lot of times that's something I hear too, is that they don't. They still do. They just don't need to worry as much about if it's oral or vaginal. They can do a topical progesterone. But for someone postpartum who's struggling, it can really be a game changer. If it's oral, you want to take it at night. If it's topical, you can take a little bit in the morning and a little bit at night. So it can really help you chill out throughout the day.
Yeah. And would it impact breast milk supply or potentially, I don't know if there's any research on this, would it go into the breast milk and then into your baby?
Yeah. I mean, anything, right, that you take, but your baby got a big dose of it all during the pregnancy and it wasn't an issue. So there's definitely not any studies that I'm aware of, but a bioidentical progesterone, I wouldn't worry about. In addition to the fact that a lot of women do get their cycles back when they're nursing. And so their bodies are producing a substantial amount as long as they're ovulating during those cycles while they're nursing. It's a pretty natural thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's something I should think about. I got my cycle back 4 months postpartum, which I was very surprised at because I like breastfeed on demand. And my whole understanding was like the higher the prolactin levels, the more you're breastfeeding, the less chance that your cycle is going to come back.
Right.
But when it came back at 4 months, I actually saw it as a really positive sign that my body's finding equilibrium again.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. No, I think that's a great sign.
Yeah. But I do have progesterone cream and I wonder, but I do have my menstrual cycle. So if I were to use it, say for, stress, anxiety, these things, even though I'm postpartum, I would still be taking it the second half of my cycle, like you said, to not kind of mess up my cycle in any way.
Right. Because if you take it before you ovulate, then you can lower LH and you won't ovulate.
Yeah.
And so, you don't want to be at risk for blocking your own menstrual cycle, your own ovulation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I just feel like there's not a lot of options really talked about other than like, pharmaceuticals, especially for women who are going through like serious postpartum depression. It's nice that there are other options out there for them.
Well, it's kind of crazy because it's just so crystal clear that not the whole reason, but a substantial part of the reason they have postpartum depression is because they were on a high. They had all of these huge levels of estrogen and progesterone, and then boom, nothing. So when you're talking about placental encapsulation, maybe they need a little progesterone. Like, we need to support our hormones. We don't necessarily need an SSRI. We need to beef up our own hormones.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And then also when we talk about if they're nursing on top of it and they're not getting that cycle, then they're not ovulating, they're not getting their own natural progesterone half of the month. So not only, did their levels plummet, but they're not making their own endogenous progesterone either for a long time.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy. Yeah. It's a lot. And I really appreciate you just talking about this because it's very helpful for me and for all my listeners as well. If anybody wants to work with you, if they want to join your program or learn more about what you do, how can they find you and where can they go?
I'm at strongchoices.com and I'm also active on Instagram at strongchoices1.
Amazing. Okay. I will definitely link that in the show notes and on my website so everyone can find you easily. Thank you so much for today. This really has got my gears thinking about perimenopause, and which is great, which I think I need to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. I'm happy. Yeah, you have a little bit younger audience than I think that a lot of women I talk to. So I feel like I'm so glad for your audience to hear all of that and think about it. Think about the later years.
Yes. Yeah. And all the things we can actually do now to just make it easier on us. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in to Biohacking with Brittany. If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone on their own wellness journey. Stay connected with me on Instagram at BiohackingBrittany for more on high performance health, non-toxic living, and the latest in biohacking. Until next time, keep striving for your healthiest, most vibrant self.